Hi folks, this is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA and an advanced QuickBooks Pro advisor. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to reclassify transactions in 5 possible ways. 1, we're going to reclassify transactions one by one, the way most people do it. 2, we're going to reclassify transactions via changing the item for transactions that are using an item instead of an account. 3, we're going to learn how to reclassify transactions using a journal entry, the way that most accountants do it. 4, we're going to learn how to reclassify transactions using the expenses tab or the expenses module inside QuickBooks Online, which is sitting right there, but it's hidden to most people because they don't know that that tool is actually used to reclassify. And 5, we're going to show you a hidden menu that's really only available for accountants called the Reclassify Transactions tool. So I'm going to show you how to access that. Now, I promise you that this will be the most productive and efficiency boosting video about QuickBooks Online you will ever watch. So in exchange, if you're excited about it, hit like right before we get right to it. All right, let's jump right to it. Now, I'm going to use a sample file to do this reclassification so you can actually do the exact same actions at home, at your office, if you follow along and use the exact same procedures that I use. So I'm going to go into this link here, which is a website that Intuit has that gives you 2 links to sample files. I'm going to use this sample file called United States QuickBooks Online Advanced. So I'm going to click on that link right there, and that's the sample file that I'm going to jump in. If you actually do the same, you click on that link, it's in the description below. You'll be able to access the exact same file. You'll be able to follow the exact same steps so you can practice before you do it on your own file. So let's get started with basically reclassifying transactions one by one. So I'll start by going into my profit and loss. I'm going to go into reports and I'm going to go into profit and loss. And that's going to take me to a profit and loss report, which is the most common way that people start looking at transactions, analyzing them before they do a reclassification. Now, I'm going to mention something to you. I actually have a shortcuts menu that I created for my own in order to be faster, more productive, more efficient, which actually contains every single module, every single area, every single link that can access everything inside QuickBooks Online, all from the shortcuts menu. So for example, if I wanted to click or go to the profit and loss without clicking on so many things, I click on my shortcuts menu right here on top in Google Chrome. Then I go to reports and then I go to profit and loss, and that will take me straight to my profit and loss. It's really the fastest way to navigate QuickBooks Online. So I'll put a link in the description below somewhere to tell you more about how you can download my shortcuts menu that I built for myself in order to be more efficient. Anyway, we're in the profit and loss. I'm going to go ahead and change the dates from this year to date to last year. Because let's say I'm doing an analysis, I'm checking last year's profit and loss, and I want to reclassify some things that might be misclassified. So I'm going to go ahead and click on collapse up here so the report's a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to click on sort and retotal them by descending order. That way the profit and loss is a little bit easier to read. So let's say I'm looking at my profit and loss and some transactions don't seem like they're in the right place. So I'm going to look at miscellaneous, for example, and let's say I don't want to have any miscellaneous. I want to put them in the right category, whatever that category is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the number. So that's going to take me to a detailed report that contains all the transactions that are inside that category. And I see right there that I have 3 transactions inside miscellaneous. I'm looking at the payee name, and maybe just by looking at it, you're like, you know what? That's in the wrong category. I'm just going to click on each one of them and reclassify. So I'm going to click on this one called Broshanen Insurance Agency. I'll just click on the name. That will now take me to the specific transaction. Here where it says category, it's categorized under miscellaneous. Let's say that just by looking at it, I know this is supposed to be insurance expense. So I'm just going to click on category and type the name of the account if I know it. So I'll type INS, and there it is. There's insurance. Now, let's say, for example, I don't know the name of my accounts. I can then just click on the drop-down menu, and I can browse through them. Now, a quick thing I will tell you, it will behoove you to memorize your chart of accounts, because if you're reclassifying and you're spending a minute scrolling up and down trying to figure out what goes in there, it's going to take you forever. So I think you should know the name of those accounts so you can just type the first couple of letters and it'll pop right out. So I'm just going to click on insurance, and I effectively just reclassified this bill from miscellaneous to insurance, and I have to click save and close at the end because that's the only way to save what I'm doing. So I'll click on save and close, click on yes, and done. So that did that. Let's look at this other one, Hicks Hardware. I'm going to click there. and that's under miscellaneous. Let's say I go and look for that physical bill. I look at it and I'm like, okay, that's job materials. So I'll just click in there, type job materials, select my job materials category, and then click on save and close. And that will be it. Let's look at one more here. Tim Philip Masonry. Let's click on that. And let's also put this under job materials. Okay, perfect. I'm going to click on save and close. So that was number one, just go into each one and reclassify. Now, if you only got 5 to 10 of these, it's actually much faster for you to go through your P&L and reclassify by one. But in some cases, you can have things that are fully wrong and you can have 10, 20 transactions. So if there's a lot of them, there's going to be different techniques that we can employ. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go into this category here called job expenses. I'm going to look at the entire amount. So I'm going to click on this dollar amount, click on job expenses, and then I'm looking through all of these. I'm looking at them, and then this $1,873, the whole thing, basically, it's misclassified. So instead of going one by one, I'm going to go ahead and do a journal entry and adjust that whole thing, let's say, against cost of goods sold. I'm not saying that's what it's supposed to be, but I'm going to go ahead and take that major category, job expenses, and adjust the whole thing against cost of goods sold with one transaction with a journal entry. So I'm going to take this dollar amount here, 1,873. I'll just copy it, and I'll do a journal entry. So for a journal entry, I'm going to click on the new menu, and then under other, I should see journal entry. Now, depending on what version of QuickBooks you have, you might have or not have the journal entry. As a matter of fact, QuickBooks in some versions, they hide journal entries from end users, from small business owners, because that tends to confuse people. That's more of an accountant tool. So if you don't see journal entry there, you actually need to go to the link straight. So if you don't have a link, a button to press, you have to go straight into the link. So in my QBO shortcuts menu, so I click on my QBO shortcuts, and then I click on other functions, and then it's right there, journal entry. So I click there on journal entry, and that will take me straight into the journal entry screen, even if you don't have a link for it. And that's a really important thing for you to know. Now, how do you get to the journal entry link? You actually literally click on this, on the URL, and you type that stuff that I highlighted there. So if you type that in there, press enter, it will take you to the journal entry, and then you can save it in your own bookmarks by clicking on the little lock, click and drag that into your bookmarks folder, and there it is. All you have to do is then click on it, and you should be able to go straight to it without having to retype the address in there. Again, if you want to download my shortcuts, I'll put a link in the description below to another video that kind of explains how this whole thing works, and then you can just have the shortcuts and save all the time that it would be for you to build your own shortcuts menu. Anyway, back to the journal entry. So again, we're going to go back into this report, and as of, let's say, 12/31/2019, we want to reclassify the $1,873 to from job expenses to cost of goods sold. So I'm going to go into my journal entry here, and then I'm going to type 12/31/2019. So I just put that date that I want up there. And then the first account is going to be job expenses. And I'm using the parent category in this case. And then we're going to do a credit because we want to remove it from expenses. And then we're going to move it into cost of goods sold. Again, I'm not saying that's what it's supposed to be. I'm saying that's what I'm deciding to do. So I'm just doing a journal entry. So instead of going one by one, I just make an entry into my books, and the entire dollar amount will be moved from one category to the next. So I'm going debiting job expenses, crediting cost of goods sold. I'm going to go ahead and click on save and close. Now what will happen is after I do that journal entry, let me change to the tab here where I had my profit and loss. I'm going to go ahead and click on run report. You're going to see that now it zeroes out. So the transactions will still be there. It won't be like reclassifying each transaction, which literally makes it go away from that category. The transactions will all be there, but then there'll be a journal entry adjusting the total dollar amount. So this is not reclassifying transactions, this is reclassifying amounts. And when would you choose this over the other? A lot of accountants do journal entries because they don't want to touch the small business owner's entries. And the journal entry means as an accountant, you decided to move a value from account to account, keeping the original history, the original transactions that every business owner made or the actual bookkeeper made. So that's why maybe some CPAs would prefer to do a journal entry. It's up to you. I personally like to do each transaction, so I don't see plus and minuses on this. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on back to report summary real quick, so then we can see the effects of this, notice that job expenses is now completely zero. Now that's still going to be on the report, letting you know that there's positives and negatives adjusting down to zero. So that's pretty cool. So now by any report that you see as zero, that means that there's transactions in it that just net to zero. So that's actually a really good thing to have. So that was journal entries. Now let's talk about reclassifying transactions that have items. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create the item so you can kind of follow the logic here. Create the item, create a transaction with an item so you can see exactly how that affects our financial statement. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the gear menu on the top right of the screen and then click on products and services. I could also click in my QBO shortcuts menu here. I can go to QBO shortcuts, products and services, and click on item list. There's two ways to get to it. So once I get into my products and services list or my item list, all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the new button on the top right, and then I'm going to click on service. I'm creating a service item, and then I'm going to call this one hourly fee or something like that. And then I'm going to make this $750, and I'm going to send this into an account called uncategorized income. So for whatever reason, I put it there, and then I'm going to reclassify it afterwards so you see how that works. So I'll go ahead and click on save and close, and then I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice. So I'll click on the new menu, and then I'm going to go into invoice, and then I'll select the first customer that's here, Amy's Birds Sanctuary. I'm going to go to Perks and Services and type hourly fee. And then I'm going to put here, let's say 100 hours. So now I have an invoice for $81,000. That should stand out. I'm also going to date the invoice. Let me date it December 30th, 2019. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on save and close. So that should be really obvious in my profit and loss when I see those $75,000 plus tax that I put in there. So let me open up back to my profit and loss report and change the date here to last year. There it is. And click on run. And then I'm going to click on collapse again. And there it is. This is the big $75,000 right there under uncategorized income. So if I click on that and I'm looking at it, and let's say I want to reclassify this, and if I actually click on it, it'll take me back into the invoice, and then I won't be able to reclassify it because I can't choose an account from there. So the only way, let me go back to the profit and loss here. So the only way to move the $75,000 from uncategorized income into, let's say, for example, services, I would either have to do a journal entry, which is an option. We just saw how to do that. Or two, change the underlying item that is going to post into that category. So what I'll do here in order to not lose the profit and loss screen here is I'm going to go back into my item list. Let me do it through my QBO shortcuts, products and services, and then I'm going to right click and click on a new tab. That way I don't lose my current report. As a matter of fact, there it is. It's a second tab there. My report is still there, so I can go back and hit refresh and see the effects of it. Now I'm just going to close here to show you, if you don't have the shortcuts menu, how you would do it. You would click right there on the sales button on the left navigation bar, and then on the products and services, you right click there and click on new tab. Either way, you will be able to open a new tab without getting rid of the current tab here that has the report. So in the tab here, I'm gonna look for the category called hourly fee. I'm gonna click on edit. So I'm gonna click on the right hand side where it says action. I'm just gonna click on edit, and then I'm gonna change the category from uncategorized income to, what did I want to do it? Under services. So I wanted to put it under services. So I'm going to change this to services. Okay. And then notice that as soon as I change it to service, it says here, also update this account's historical transaction. If I click on that checkbox and I click on save and close, QuickBooks will go back to every single transaction that had that item and change the category, including close periods. So make sure that when you're doing this, you're very intentional and you're aware of the potential changes to your historical balance sheet and profit and loss this could make. So you have to kind of know what's going on and make sure you understand that past financial statements could be changed. So you probably want to back up your financial statements or your reports or something like that prior to doing something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save and close. Depending on how many transactions it is, it could take a little bit of a while. Of course, there was only one transaction, so it's not that many. So I'm going to go back into my reports here, and it's still sitting here under uncategorized. But then when I click on run report, it will refresh the number. So the minute I click run report, you're going to see the $75,000 shifted from uncategorized to services. I'm going to click on run report, And notice what happened right there. Services, boom, $75,000 got moved from one category to the other. So that was the first three, right? So we did one by one with the journal entry, and then we did changing the item. Let's go to the fourth one, which is going into the expenses module to reclassify transactions. So we're going to go into expenses here, and then we're going to click on expenses. So expenses, right? And then under the expenses tab, you will notice that this will show you by default the last 365 days worth of transactions all dumped in there. So if I wanted to go to a specific account category and reclassify transactions in there, what I do is I click on filter, and I'm going to go to category. And let's say, for example, I want to reclassify some things under job expenses. I'm going to click on job expenses, and then I'm going to click on apply. So now currently I'm looking at the last 365 days, all the transactions under job expenses. Let's say I only want to reclassify last year. So I'm going to go into filters again, and then under date, I'm going to click last year. So you can do last year, last month, whatever period you want to work with. And then we'll click on apply. And that's going to show me all my job expenses for last year. Now I can also sort. This report is awesome. I mean, this screen is awesome because I can click on payee, and then I can sort them all by vendor or by payee. I can also sort them by type or sort them by date. So depending on what you're trying to do, you might want to play with these sorting options. You can sort by date, type, payee, category, and totals. Tons of sorting abilities. Now you can click on the gear menu on the top right of that screen and also add some additional columns. So if you want to add a memo or a due date or a status, okay, and depending on the transaction, these things mean different things. You can then sort by any of these things. So if any of this stuff is relevant, you can add or remove the columns from there. So that's actually pretty interesting. Now, let's say, for example, I want to reclassify all the transactions for a specific vendor, specific payee. So I click on payee, and then I got all the Hicks hardware. So I want to change all the Hicks hardware transactions from job materials, let's say, to cost of goods sold. So all I have to do is click on the first one, and then I hold the shift key, and I go all the way into the last Hicks hardware, click on that, and that's going to select all the transactions from the first one I clicked to the last one I clicked. And then I can just go into batch actions, click on categorized selected, and then I would select cost of goods sold, select that, and then click on apply, and boom, they're actually all going to go away from this screen because this screen is filtering and only showing things that are under job expenses. Now it's important for you to know that you don't have to do shift click to select them all. You can also do control click or command click on the Mac, so you can actually be very selective of which ones you want to reclassify. So let's say I only want to reclassify this one, and then skip one and reclassify the next one. So I hit control on a PC or command on a Mac, and then I'll click on that. And then I can basically click the specific ones that I want to reclassify. I can just check the ones that I want. Or actually, you don't have to hit control. You just click them. As a matter of fact, you don't even need control at all. You either do shift or just select them manually. So once I select all the ones that I want, I can click on batch actions, categorize, type cost of goods sold, apply, and boom. And I can also do one by one from here without doing the check marks or doing batch actions. So let's say I want to change this one to cost of goods sold. I just click on the category, type cost of goods sold, click on it, and there's no apply or save button. So be very careful in this screen. So you can just change it once and it goes away and it moves it into the transaction that it's supposed to be. Now, because this screen is so awesome and also dangerous at the same time, for some of my clients, I actually disable this feature. I go into the gear menu, and then I click here where it says show more, and then I uncheck category. And basically what that allows me to do is when someone is logged in under their user, they don't have the temptation or the tool to reclassify transactions from here. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, you might want to show or hide that column, because it is so easy to reclassify something. It is so easy to change something. And depending on the expertise level of the person using this, that might be a double-edged sword. So it's really up to you. Do you want people to be able to reclassify things quickly or not? Up to you, depending on the use case. So that's using the expense transactions tool. I think is great. It's worth noting that under filter, there's tons of other options here. I can do it all by a certain payee. So for example, under category, I'm going to change that to all. But then I'm going to just pick one specific payee, and I want to see all the transactions for that payee. So let's look for that insurance company that we're looking at that earlier. So Bros Heenan Insurance Agency. Click on that. Under dates, I'm going to go ahead and click on all dates here, and then everything else leave it on all, and then click on apply, and then I can see all the transactions pertaining to that vendor. So I can actually click on the two that I want to reclassify, click on batch actions, categorize selected, and I can change it to whatever I want. Again, I had disabled that column. So here on the gear menu on the top right, show more. Let me turn, where are you? Category again, so I can see them. So notice how these are in two different, completely different places. So I'm going to select the two, go to batch actions, categorize, and put that into insurance. Let's say it's supposed to go into workers' compensation insurance. So I'll put it in that one and then click on apply. So awesome tool, not as powerful as the last tool I'll show you, which is the accountant's reclassify tool. It's by far the most powerful module or transaction reclassifying tool in the entire QuickBooks Online ecosystem. So to access that, you actually have to know the URL because it's hidden from end users, and it's really just available for accountants. But if you know the link, you can access it directly. So I'm going to go into my shortcuts menu, go to QBO shortcuts, go to accountant tools, and click on Reclassify Transactions. And that's going to take me into this hidden place called Reclassify Transaction. Now, if you want to know the URL, check out the URL up here. It's right here. So as long as you select, let me just select the stuff that you would need to type. So right here, so everything that is highlighted, qbo.intuit.com/app/reclassify-transaction. If you actually type that in the URL after you're logged in, it will take you into this hidden menu. Now, if you have my bookmarks, you can just go straight to the bookmarks and save yourself the time that it takes to type that stuff in there. All right, so I'm in the tool, and this is how this tool works. So you're going to select account types, profit and loss, or balance sheet. So depending on what you're trying to reclassify, you can pick that. I'm going to pick profit and loss. Here's the date range. I can pick my date range up here, and I can pick the category that I want to reclassify. Now I'm going to pick design income just to show you, because there's some invoices here that you actually cannot reclassify because they have items, and I'll show you. I'll select them all and click on reclassify. And I get this error. See, I can't change it because it contains items. As I mentioned earlier, you actually have to change the underlying item to be able to reclassify transactions with items. So I'm not going to have much luck reclassifying invoices or sales receipts unless I change the underlying item and the account that is supposed to link to. So let's look at maybe for expenses to reclassify. So I'm going to go ahead and click on advertising, and I'm going to click on from. Let's go back to, let's say, all the way back to January. So we'll pick January up here, and we'll find all the transactions under advertising. Probably not a good idea. Let's pick one that has more stuff. Let's pick, let's say, one that would have more transactions. So cost of goods sold is perfect. So you can see all the transactions affecting cost of goods sold. Notice up here, it will keep a record of all the filters that you're running. I can click on type and change and be very specific. So I only want to look at the bills under cost of goods sold. There's the bills. Or only want to look at the expenses under cost of goods sold. There's just the expenses. Or maybe I want all transaction types, but I want a specific payee. So I'm going to click here and click on, let's say, Hicks Hardware. Click on that and click on Find Transactions. So this will allow you to use multiple filters, just like the expense tab. These two tools are actually very similar, but I like this one better. I feel that I have a lot more flexibility under this tool. So I can actually select the transactions I want to reclassify. So now I can click on this little checkbox here that says Select All, and I can click here, it says Modify. I can either modify accounts or classes. Those are the two types of things that we can reclassify. There's no classes in this QuickBooks file. That's why you really can't see that classes option. But this will allow me to choose what I want to reclassify. I actually don't need to select anything up here in this specific case. Then I'm going to click on Reclassify, and then I'm going to change this to Job Materials, and I want to put this, let's say, under Plants and Soil. So I can pick the specific category that I want to reclassify to, click on Apply, and boom, all the transactions get reclassified in one shot. It's a really, really awesome tool. Again, it's a hidden tool only for accountants, but if you know that URL, you'll be able to access it. Now I'm going to give you one more bonus tip here. I'm going to go to my shortcuts menu here. and then I'm going to go into reports and then click on audit log. And I'm going to show you how to see what transactions were edited. Okay, so in the audit log, I'm going to go to filter. I'm going to select under dates. I'm going to select today. And then under show only these, I'm going to click on only these. And then I'll click on transactions. And then I'll click on show all transactions. And I click on apply. And when I look at the audit log, I can see under event, I can see everything that says the word edited. So I can see every single transaction that was edited or it was changed or reclassified, whatever it happens to be. And then I can just literally just click on view where it says history, click on view, and then I can see exactly what was changed. So you look originally on December 31st, the transaction was entered into job materials, decks, and patios. Then on January 13, it was changed to cost of goods sold. And then on January 13, again, a couple of minutes later, it was changed to plants and soil. So it's actually pretty cool. It lets you know what was changed and who changed it. Now, if you don't have the My Shortcuts menu and you want to go into the audit log, simply you click on the gear menu on the top right and then click on audit log, and that will take you straight there. So anyway, this video was all about reclassifying transactions, boosting your productivity, boosting your efficiency. If you love this video, hit like, subscribe to the channel. This is the first of many productivity boosting, efficiency boosting videos I will be creating this year for QuickBooks Online. And add some comments below. Did I miss anything? What was your favorite part? I would love to see. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.